Guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 1 running backs. I have everything you need to know. We're going to talk about basically every single running back on the week 1 slate. If you have not already, I did a similar video for the quarterbacks on the week 1 slate. So if you want to see the quarterbacks, that video is already on the channel. We are also going to record a wide receivers video where I go through every single player that I think is viable or available to be able to play in week 1. But we are still at cruising altitude. We are not coming in for a landing yet. I don't want to get hyper granular with all of this stuff. I will speculate on a few things, which players I think are going to be highly played, which players might be a better tournament play, and which players I'm interested in or want to avoid. But like, we're not really going to get all the way in there until like Friday or Saturday of week 1. We're still like 3 weeks out. But let's take a look at all this stuff and see where the value lies and how DraftKings priced everything at the running back position that first week of NFL. Let's go.
He's a legend.
Let's start all the way at the top. The most expensive running back on the slate at $9,100 in week 1 is Jonathan Taylor. The 1.01, unless you're picking CMC as the 1.01, in most drafts this summer, still the highest ADP of any running back. His ADP is slightly ahead of CMC. But for week 1 is in an absolute dream situation. If we go over to like the DraftKings Sportsbook and look at the main slate starting right here. Now, they're not playing at home, right? We know that. They're on the road, but like they're on the road against Houston. So like, does it even matter? Houston's defense is not all that great. Obviously, the over-under of 44, it's not like a 50-plus game, but it doesn't need to be, right? Like they have a team total of like 26, 27 points. That's more than enough. If this team scores 28 points, 4 touchdowns, you'd have to expect that there's a realistic expectation that Jonathan Taylor has himself a day where he's got 20-plus touches, 3-4 targets, a touchdown, possibly 2, probably the highest floor expectation by a long margin, by a big margin, once projections really come out for week 1, once they really get down to the nitty gritty. He's going to have one of the higher floors and highest touchdown upsides and one of the highest player props on the slate. He is less restrictive on DraftKings at 9,100 than he is on like FanDuel, where he's like 10-2. FanDuel has made it difficult to play him. Now, there are 3 running backs right below him in price. Derrick Henry at 8,600. It's scary to play Derrick Henry at 8,600, but it's also scary to fade Derrick Henry. The reason that my water bottle just fell. Rip. The reason it's scary to play Derrick Henry, coming off of a foot injury, yes, I believe that he is fully healthy at this point. It's scary to play him because of the floor. Scarier to play him in cash than it is in tournaments. In tournaments, I think anybody that has a ceiling is fine. And Derrick Henry, like, always has that 125-yard, 2-touchdown ceiling. It was great last year to see that in the games that he was used, you know, before the foot injury, he got a good amount of targets. All I've ever asked for out of the Titans in regards to Derrick Henry has been 4 targets a game. Get him, run 1 screenplay a quarter. That's it. Just a peek. That's all, just a little bit. You don't have to feature him in your passing game, but you should use him in your passing game. Well, they did that last year with the coaching change, the offensive change, and before he sustained that injury, he was breaking fantasy football. Right, he had the foot injury. Foot injuries are really difficult for any running back or any basketball players. Like, it takes away a lot, especially a big hulking back like Derrick Henry, who's a 240, 250 guy. Like, that could be something that might hinder him moving forward, where they have to taper his usage. You were always getting like 25 plus touches a game out of him. The problem is, if he's not putting up games like this, where he's breaking the 100-yard bonus, where he's getting a couple of catches in the passing game and scoring, you know, multiple touchdowns, he has a very realistic possibility, especially if game flow goes against them, where they lose games and they're not playing from ahead. All of a sudden, he gets kind of scripted out of these games and has that floor of like 10 points, 6 points, 12 points. It's not great. So your requirement is that he busts that 100-yard bonus for you, that he gets 25 plus touches, and that he gets 4 targets. I love him for tournaments. I typically do not play Derrick Henry in cash. Go check out everything that they have over at rotowire.com. They have provided us a very limited time offer for a all access pass to everybody that is a part of the Smiz Gang community. Right down in the pinned comment, you can use smizzle.tv/rotowire and get a 2-day all access pass to everything that they have over at RotoWire. If your draft is coming up, perfect. Go check out their 2022 fantasy football draft kit. They have tons of value information, ADP reports, bunch of sleepers, auction values. You can enter your own league stats to print out the exact cheat sheet that you need for your draft. So if your draft is coming up against your friends and family, definitely go check out the RotoWire promo that we have running right now. It's going to expire soon, right after week 1 kickoff. So get in there and support the people that support us here on the channel. Christian McCaffrey is exactly the opposite. Love him in cash games pretty much all the time. Love him in tournaments because he can single-handedly get you that 35+ point game and force you to find somebody else. You know, anybody who doesn't play Christian McCaffrey forces them to find somebody else where they can make up those points because of his ability to be as voluminous in the passing game as he has been. One of the highest targeted backs in the history of football. Yes, I understand that there is injury risk, but when it comes to daily fantasy, you just have to play him that week that he's healthy. And the weeks that he's healthy, 27 points, not 1 touchdown. 24 points, 1 touchdown. The floor, because of his usage in the passing game, 26 points, no touchdowns. He does have multiple touchdown upside. I believe that this Carolina offense is going to be more efficient this year with Baker Mayfield than it was last year with Sam Darnold. No matter what you think of Baker, whether you think he's the answer or not, whether you think he's elite or not, I think that he's one of those quarterbacks that falls into the he's fine category, where Sam Darnold was somebody I kind of thought might be fine, but he was not. He was actually bad. And going from actually bad quarterback play to fine quarterback play with a healthy Christian McCaffrey is a dangerous proposition for anybody not willing to play Christian McCaffrey at all. Austin Ekeler, I have to say this because I have always said and will continue to say, because I get asked a very simple question by people. Should I always play players from the games that start late, the 1:25? I'm on the West Coast, the only legitimate time zone. Should I play players from the later games so that I have player minutes remaining, or is it okay to load up on 10 a.m. games? My standard answer is it doesn't matter what time the game starts. Fantasy points are fantasy points. However, fantasy points more predictably come from games where they have really high totals. So looking at the slate and looking at the later games on the slate, you have 3 of the highest scoring games on the slate, 2 specifically. You have 2 games specifically that have higher totals. Kansas City Chiefs and Arizona with 53. Green Bay Packers at 48 against Minnesota. And Raiders and Chargers with 51.5. Giants Titans 44. Look at all the earlier games. 44, 44, 45, 44.5, 40, 42, 49 Eagles and Lions. Great. 45. All these are like normal to slow. Right? They do not project to have a lot of plays. They do not project to have a lot of scoring and a lot of touchdowns. So I wanted to talk about that very quickly before somebody said, well, yeah, you always say it doesn't matter what time it starts, but you also said play games from the late. You're going to want to play games from the later games in this slate. Yeah, because those are the high scoring environments outside of Philly and Detroit. Austin Ekeler does happen to play in one of those projectably high scoring games with Las Vegas going to Los Angeles, their former home, to play against the Los Angeles Chargers. Absolutely love this Chargers offense. Love the way last year that Austin Ekeler was used. Don't think there's any way that Austin Ekeler has the same amount of receiving touchdowns in 2022 that he had in 2021. I'm also not sure that Austin Ekeler sees the amount of touches that he saw in 2021 here in 2022. He has said that remaining healthy is very difficult for him at 21 to 26 touches per game. It is probably more viable for him to be healthy for an entire season if they play him 15 to 20 touches a game. Now, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but after the course of an entire season, it adds up. 18 times, 5 is a lot when it comes to total touches in a game. I think that they're going to spell EKELER a lot more this year than in years past. I feel like there is a heavy chance that 8,200 might be on the high end, especially based on this week 1 slate. I'm fine with EKELER as a play. There's obviously touchdown upside being in this offense for Los Angeles Chargers and a really high scoring game. And he is going to be used in the passing game a lot. But I think his totals in terms of opportunities, in terms of total touches, are going to be more along the lines of this game in week 15, this game in week 14, this game in week 12, as opposed to games like this. 17 carries, 17 carries. I think we're going to see between 10 and 14 carries a game and probably 6 or 7 targets a game out of EKELER, which, by the way, that's like the typical Alvin KAMARA usage historically, which I think is just fine for him. But I think that this price is going to fall more down into this range in the weeks to come. Joe Mixon in that 7,000 to 8,000 range does look like a really good play. Everybody's super excited, and rightfully so, about playing the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins stacks, maybe mix in a contrarian Double H, Hunter Hurst, Helmsley. If you wanted to go with him, fine, go for it. But Joe Mixon does look like a contrarian play against the Pittsburgh defense that is not scary at all on an offense that does project to be somewhat efficient. Alvin KAMARA slid in terms of ADP down into the 30s, and now the middle 3rd round, and now he's climbing back up into the mid 2nd round, kind of where I believe he belongs. Because of the uncertainty of whether or not he was going to be suspended. Now he's probably not going to get suspended. And at 7,600, I think the price is fine. Although this is a really slow-paced game and the lowest total on the entire slate. KAMARA should get his. The key with KAMARA, the thing to watch for as we approach week 1, is will Michael Thomas play in week 1 or will Michael Thomas not play in week 1? Now, he's missed 2 years. He was activated through training camp. He's been playing in full at training camp, but as of yesterday, he sustained a brand new hamstring injury. I'm not saying he's not going to play in week 1. I'm saying it's something we have to monitor. So as we watch this, in the games where Michael Thomas does not play, Alvin KAMARA does see more usage in the passing game. That will boost his floor and his ceiling for this game in the case that Michael Thomas does not play. So look out for that. Dalvin Cook at home. I don't believe they are favored in week 1, right? I think they're dogs to Green Bay. Yeah, 2-point dogs, but at home, gonna get the lion's share of the touches and carries. Madison is clearly behind him. Madison right now is like a 25 to 30% back, with Dalvin Cook handling about 70% of the snaps and touches at running back for Minnesota. I do expect them to be more pass heavy this year than in years past with the new system that they're working in, but that doesn't mean that Dalvin Cook can't eat. Right? He is a proficient pass catching back and has big playability. And if you're going to tell me that Dalvin Cook is going to be lower played than everybody else, right? Looking quickly at projections over here on my other monitor, I think that he is projected as the 4th highest ceiling at running back. These are way too early projections, but he does not look like people are going to click him. He's in a very awkward price point, right? So people are either going to pay up to get to Taylor or McCaffrey, possibly Austin Ekeler. A lot of people are going to click Mixon. And then I think a lot of people are going to click down in this range, the 5,500 through 7,000 range, which leaves Dalvin Cook as probably a low played, low percentage. Don't know if he's going to be under 5%, but right now he may be a candidate for that 5 under 5 video when week 1 gets here. So again, take a look at that when things come. I don't think he's going to be a cash game play in week 1. But it is what it is. James Conner at home against Kansas City. Love the usage for James Conner post Chase Edmonds injury last year. This was the James Conner that we want in terms of DraftKings and fantasy. Heavy dose of usage in the passing game. All of these targets, 2.3 fantasy points expected from every running back target versus every 1 point per rush. You just get 2.3 times the fantasy expectations. I would rather have a back who gets a lot of usage, right? 65, 75% of the running back snaps and touches, all of the inside the 5 carries. So massive touchdown upside with James Conner anytime that they get close, even with a quarterback like Kyler Murray. And all of this added bonus, the yards, the catches that go along with those targets, and easily convertible targets to catches. 6 targets, 6 catches. 2, 2, 9, 9, 2, 2. Like, these are not routes that don't turn into fantasy points when he is targeted out of the backfield. Looking down at this range where I think everybody's going to go. Everybody loves DeAndre Swift. He's a pass catching back on a team that people believe is an arrow up team, right? The Lions. And he's got the Hard Knocks effect where we're all watching him. We're all falling in love with the Lions. You get that afterglow from watching Hard Knocks, and wow, DeAndre Swift works really hard. And God, the running backs coach thinks that he could be the #1 running back in the NFL. How can I not play him in week 1? He's going to get played in week 1. As I said, the highest total on the early slate of games with a high floor running back that should see 65+% of the snaps, touches, and or opportunities. As long as he's healthy, this is tremendous production. I believe that this offense is going to have more touchdown upside this year than it had last year. I think they're going to play from ahead a little bit more on the season in total versus last year, but like a total of 49, faster pace game. I do like. I think that a lot of people are going to settle into this range. Aaron Jones against Minnesota, splitting work with AJ Dillon, but should receive more of the passing market share this year versus last year. Devontae Adams vacated like 706 targets a year. Don't fact check me, but like that number is close. So like that's a lot of targets that have to be soaked up. And if we really think that all of those targets are going to go to like Allen Lazard, who does not show great separation ability, the rookie Romeo Dobbs, how much like content equity is lost knowing that his name is Dobbs and not Dubs? Like all the big Dubs, like there was so much name equity with this kid, and like it's just gone. The single most disappointing piece of information that's come across to me this fantasy preseason is the fact that his last name is Dobbs and not Dubs. But I digress. Back to Aaron Jones. 6,700, going to get an awful lot of targets, going to get, again, this is the wheelhouse for running backs, for daily fantasy, specifically when it comes to DraftKings scoring. Full point PPR with 100-yard bonuses. This is the wheelhouse. 10 to 15 carries, 6 or more targets in a game. It just leads to such a high floor with the possibility of a massive ceiling, 25+ fantasy points. That 6+ targets in a game from a running back equates to more 20+ fantasy point games than anything else at the position. It's the easiest path. So when you get a running back that's going to get you 10, 12 carries and rack up some yards on the ground, as well as having some rushing touchdown equity, as opposed to the pass down only backs like Nyheim Hines and JD McKissick and whoever else you want to throw, James White, great career, but like guys that went in that category, they're only in on third down, long down and distance, 2-minute drill. If you get a back who's a heavy dose back, even if he's going to get 50% of the snaps here, because AJ Dillon's going to be the pounder when they get in close, and has breakaway ability, has big splash ability, as well as all this usage in the passing game, they can get you that 20+ fantasy points if they wander into the end zone. Gives you that 25+ fantasy point upside. So Aaron Jones, another player that I like. A lot of players to like in this range. One player I don't like in this range is Nick Chubb. Certainly going to be under 5% this week. I'm out on the Browns offense in total for, I don't know, let's say the first 11 weeks of the season. Then we'll reassess. But like, I'm not buying the Browns offense. It's going to be a slow paced game. They're going to play defense and bully ball. They're going to run the hell out of the football, but like, they're not going to throw Nick Chubb the ball. Nick Chubb is going to have games like this. We're going to chase it in tournaments. Okay, we're going to do that. Nick Chubb is probably the first 11 weeks of the season probably never going to be a cash game play for me unless his salary dips to like 5,200. Unless it's just undeniable that he's just way too cheap. But in this range, if you're telling me I could play Nick Chubb for 6,500 or pass catching backs with both a higher floor and similar ceiling in DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Aaron Jones, we'll get to Harris in a minute, but like he's very similar to Chubb and not going to get as high a market share. Like this range right in here, this is dead. Josh Jacobs, not excited to play Josh Jacobs, not sold that they want him to be the guy anymore. They just cut Kenyon Drake. I think that Zamir White's going to cut more into Josh Jacobs than people assume. And with the coaching style that's coming in here, this new head coach from New England has done all of the things, Josh has done all of the things that like No running back plays over 40%. Like Amir Abdullah is going to have a role. It's 2022 and Amir Abdullah is going to have a role on an NFL football team. What are we even doing with the Raiders? I know what I'm doing. I'm not clicking their names. When it comes to playing Nick Chubb, I could play another back who's going to get an awful lot of volume and a lot of usage in the passing game. I'd rather play every other back. I'd rather play Aaron Jones. I'd rather play DeAndre Swift. I'd rather play James Conner. I'd rather play, where did he go? Harris, right? I'm probably not going to play Josh Jacobs, but even he might be a better play than Nick Chubb. So Nick Chubb, going to be sub 5%. If you want to take the chance that he gets a 30-point day, great. But like, even if you get that, it's the when you win, what do you win philosophy with Nick Chubb. If Nick Chubb has a 30-point day, 8 other players have to fail. It's not one. It's not one other player that has to fail. Like, he could have a 30-point day in week 1, right? Carolina's defense has not been good. They're really bad against running backs. So like he could theoretically have a fantastic day. However, he would have to have a bad day. 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 He. There's too many other running backs that would have to fail. Fine. You want to limit it to just his price range? 1, 2, 3, 4 other running backs would all have to fail for you to win with Nick Chubb. It's way too thin a play. Not to mention one of my favorite guys through the summer. If I did a My Guys, I'd never done like a My Guys. The fantasy footballers do a lot of My Guys stuff. Matthew Berry has his ride or die every year. Like everybody's got the person that like this guy is tied to them. I don't think I have spoken about some player as much this offseason as I have about Saquon Barkley. His ADP has responded. I am so super happy that I have so much Saquon Barkley between ADP of like 24 and 30 as I have, because he is now creeping into the first round. I know you're here for daily fantasy talk and not season-long talk, but I love Saquon Barkley at 6,100. There may not be a back in the league that gets more touches or opportunities, carries plus targets as opposed to carries plus receptions, than Saquon Barkley. There's nobody else. He is in a massive upgrade of an offensive scheme with Brian Daboll there instead of the Clapper. And now all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley is healthy once again after blowing his knee 2 years ago. And typically players take a whole year after ACL. So like if you blow your knee in 2022, 2021 is that year where you have to get used to walking around and rebuild your confidence and your explosiveness and your athleticism. It takes a whole other year to get that back. Unluckily for him, he stepped on a safety or a linebacker's foot and rolled his ankle last year randomly in a completely freak injury. But now he's 2 years removed. The explosiveness should totally be back. He should be there. He looks like he's there through training camp and preseason. And I think that we're in for a really big year with possibly 350 plus opportunities, carries plus targets, and like 95% of the inside the 5 carries for the New York Giants. There's just nobody else to go to. He's 6,100. One of my favorite running backs in a way too early look at this slate. I think he's going to project very well with a floor, with a possible ceiling, and at this really low price tag. I think that it's realistic to think that he is going to compete in terms of opportunities with Najee Harris, with Christian McCaffrey, with Jonathan Taylor in terms of total touches on the season. And if you're telling me that I'm going to get him at 2 to 3K less than those top guys, he, in my opinion, is going to be priced at some point this season at the assuming both are healthy, at the same price point that Austin Ekeler is. So I feel we're getting Saquon Barkley at a massive discount here in week 1. Antonio Gibson, no, we're not. No, they don't like him right now. They're not friends. He's not their buddy guy. He's not their guy friend. He's not their friend, buddy. He's none of that. Like, no. Brian Robinson Jr. has kind of taken over the run with the ones right now. So all of our hopes on Antonio Gibson the past few years, gone. Cordero Patterson, no, I'd rather play Barkley. A really slow-paced game, really low total. Yeah, they're playing at home. I like the way that they were utilizing him. So, okay, this is a really weird thing that happened to him over the course of last season. Early in the season, Cordarrelle Patterson was scoring a lot of touchdowns. 2 touchdowns here in week 2 against Tampa Bay, 3 touchdowns here against Washington. Wasn't playing a really high percentage of snaps through the first month, but was getting good usage in the passing game. This is that J.D. McKissic, Nyheim Hines role. He's playing like 35% of the snaps and scoring an unrealistic amount of touchdowns for the amount of exposure he had on the field. Then they started playing him more snaps. He was getting like 55, 60% of the snaps. And then they bumped him up to like 70% by the middle to the end of the season, but they stopped throwing him the football. Like, he's a former wide receiver. Why are you utilizing him as like a between the tackles guy? The Falcons were a hot mess last year. I'm hoping they are less of a hot mess this year, and that Cordarrelle Patterson gets like 10 carries a game, but also gets like 5-6 targets a game. I think it's a tough bet for that to happen at this point, which makes me not want to play him at 5,800, but again, 30,000, take it for what it is. Dave Montgomery also falling out of favor in Chicago, playing a really difficult opponent. So you're going to get less snaps anytime you play against San Francisco. They are 7+ point underdogs here in week 1 in a very low totaled game. I don't love this spot. It's not my favorite thing. Real King, thank you very much for the 28 months. Appreciate the long-term commitment to the channel. Harris, 5,700. Right now, New England has said they are no longer going to go with what they've done for the last, I don't know, 10 years, which is have a pass catching back, a designed pass catching back, and then have, you know, the do your job role, right? Like, you just carry the ball, the other guy comes in, he just catches the ball. We might see, I don't know that we will, but we might see more usage in the passing game for Damien Harris. He is clearly splitting time with Ramondre Stevenson, who has been the darling throughout camp and seen his ADP rise from like 130 to like the mid 80s now, and it's probably going to keep rising to like the 70s. He's going to overtake Tony Pollard at some point because he just projects to get more volume than Pollard does in season long and best ball drafts. But Damien Harris at 5,700, similar to Nick Chubb in the fact that he's dangerous because not a full snap load and not going to, or has never been very used in the passing game. Etienne Jr. and Robinson are the interesting thing. I love that DraftKings priced them at the same point. Travis Etienne does fit the archetype, right? Like, he does fit what we want out of a DraftKings back. Now, the first week of preseason, when Robinson did not play, Etienne saw like 14 of 16 snaps when Trevor Lawrence was on the field, got a bunch of carries, like would have profiled to be exactly what we want out of a running back on DraftKings. I think he's not going to get that. I think we're going to get usage more like those first 4 to 6 weeks out of Cordarrelle Patterson from 2021, but without the ridiculous touchdown variance that he was on the right side of last year. I think the Jaguars are an arrow up offense. I like Trevor Lawrence. I think that he's going to bounce. I think that he's going to carry this team to a much better points per game output this year than last year, but Travis Etienne is at best going to split snaps 50-50 with James Robinson, who is fully back and playing and ready to go at this point. We know what he's done the last couple years when he's been healthy. He has been actually #good every time that he's taken the field. So this is a really difficult spot with 2 running backs on the road against Washington, who projects to be better this year versus last. They're strong up front at the very least with their front 7 is the Washington defense. And so 2 guys splitting time. If I was going to take one over the other, it would probably be Etienne at the same price point just because of the elevated floor. But don't go into week 1 expecting Etienne to get 20 plus touches in this game. You're going to need an outlier game at 5,600 for him to be very viable. An outlier game meaning multiple touchdowns on 50% of snaps or 10 plus targets out of Travis Etienne Jr. Not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying it's a little bit thin. Now, Ramondre Stevenson, the other guy that I talked about, I'm expecting more snaps out of him. Maybe 45 to 50% of the running back snaps. They are going to use Damien Harris on the first series, and then Stevenson on the second, and then back to Harris on the third, and then back to Stevenson on the next one. And then they're probably going to sprinkle in Ty Montgomery a little bit. I don't know why, but they're probably going to do it. So we're getting into the territory in this range where you're dealing with part-time running backs, except J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is going to be a heavy dose guy. The running back in Baltimore, the last couple of seasons with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, typically the RB1 typically gets 14 to 18 carries, but they also have higher touchdown expectation than most people believe, right? And Dobbins pre-injury was an extremely explosive back with great metrics in terms of yards after first contact, breakaway ability, explosive plays, all these different metrics that predict that a running back that gets a heavy dose is going to have big time upside. Dobbins still carries that along with him, as well as big time touchdown upside. The last time we saw a talented running back in this Lamar Jackson offense was when like Mark Ingram in 2019 had like a 15 touchdown season. Now, if a player down this low against a Jets defense can get you multiple touchdowns, J.K. Dobbins is that guy. But like, much like Derrick Henry, like, I'm not comparing J.K. Dobbins to Derrick Henry other than saying that it's not going to come via the air. You're not going to get a lot of target help here. So for him to get you that big time tournament winning day, it's going to have to come on the ground by breaking a long touchdown, because I don't expect him to get more than 18 carries. He's going to have to bust a long touchdown to get you that 100-yard bonus and score multiple touchdowns on the ground. So low floor, high ceiling, solid tournament play, but not going to be in my consideration for cash games. But Breece Hall might be on the other side of this game. The rookie looks really good. He's an extremely talented running back, high profile, high pedigree. Say what you will about the Jets offense. If you're buying with Joe Flacco, you're waiting until Wilson comes back. He's in consideration for me in week one, probably not a cash game consideration because I think that there are better options at running back, but like now we're getting into like these are the tournament play type players. And Breece Hall has breakaway speed, has the ability to catch passes out of the backfield, and is a really good back on a team that I think is an arrow up offense. Miles Sanders against Detroit, go for it. I don't know what they're going to do with their running backs. It's just the Eagles are a enigma shrouded in mystery. You know, the way that they deploy their running backs is weird. The fact that he had as many touches as he had last season, 144 attempts and 29 catches, and only scored 0 touchdowns is really peculiar. It's like, it's just really odd. It's almost like it's a running joke at this point. It's kind of like the Jacoby Myers. You can't have that many catches and yards and not score a touchdown. I think Miles Sanders bounces. I believe that this Eagles offense is going to be a lot better this year than last. I think that they're going to be in the red zone and inside the 5 more than they were last year. And I think that they're not going to suddenly just bring in somebody else every time that they get in there. And Miles Sanders is going to score more touchdowns than he did last year. I would give him a floor of like 6 touchdowns this year versus last year, which is like infinitely more touchdowns considering that he scored 0 last year in terms of a touchdown rate. Elijah Mitchell, not going to give you much help in the passing game. I know he did in the playoffs, but this was a Jimmy G offense in games that were very close, and this game was a snow game, and this game they had to throw the ball because you have to let pressure off against the Rams. You're not going to have to do that against Chicago. He is going to carry the ball a lot, so you do have that same sort of feeling where you're going to get like 18 or 27 or 22. Like 20-plus carries could very seriously be inbound in this situation. But a Trey Lance offense, they could run it 40-plus times a game. It's going to be very slow. You're reliant on, just like Dobbins, just like Henry, to get you that 100-yard bonus with upside. At 5,400, I think he's fine as a tournament play. And now we're getting into like the A.J. Dillon, same as, I think he's Aaron Jones, but probably going to get way less receptions, even though he was way better in the passing game than people gave him credit for being last year in the absence of Aaron Jones in this little stretch here from week 9 through 12, where he scored, got 5 of 5, 6 of 6, 4 of 4, and looked good doing it too. Like he was making some outstanding catches during that stretch. Like he can certainly help in the passing game, and there may be a little bit of a bump in his overall target market share at running back, but that's kind of all the running backs that I feel are heavily viable, at least at this point. Everybody else that's on the list is essentially a backup, requires an injury to step forward. I'm never really interested in guys like McKissick, players like Nyheim Hines. Sure, if you want to play guys like that are backups, that are long down and distance, third down backs, 2-minute drill backs, go for it. The last guy probably that's close enough on this list would be Chase Edmonds in Miami going against New England. If you believe in the McDaniel offense, if you believe that Chase Edmonds is going to fit into that role that we talked about before, 10 to 12 carries, 5 to 6 targets, he's only 5,200 on an offense that I think is going to be much, much, much better than this Miami offense was last year, with all the attention that has to be paid on the outside to Waddle on one side and Tyreek on the other. Chase Edmonds can do some things, and if they put him in the position to score touchdowns when they get into the red zone, I don't really expect him to be the inside the 5 back. So those touchdowns are going to be tough to come by. They'll probably go with the other bevy of running backs that they have, like Mostert, like Sony Michel, or somebody else when they get in close, more the pounder aspect. But like if Chase Edmonds gets any of that work, big arrow up here. Love him as a tournament play in week 1. So thank you guys for being here. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Look out for another one right there. It's Kermo, the non-copyright frog. We have a great DraftKings video for you today. We're going to talk about all the running backs in week 1. Yeah!
He's a legend.